Pizzagate.
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 A conspiracy theory.
Debunked internet conspiracy theory.
A fictitious online conspiracy theory.
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill them and have no one ask where they are. We're also importing children by the plane load.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Our government, there's two elements. There's the overt and the covert. I was a member of the overt group. The covert group are involved in assassinations, drugs, kidnapping children, so on and so forth.
The fake story was widely debunked.
They have no evidence for this. It's really crazy stuff.
Why is it that the topic of pedophilia is such a closed conversation? And clearly, one of the reasons is because you have pedophilia at such high levels of government, at the highest echelons of government.
People need to face this. This could be their little kid. This could be their neighbor's little kid. This could be a relative's little kid. As unpleasant as this is, Americans need to come out and not only face this, but they need to start fighting it.
Pizza, pasta, hot dogs, ice cream, murder, pedophilia, Satanism, human trafficking, Washington, Hollywood, Hillary Clinton, ping pong. What an awfully strange sequence of words. What could these completely unrelated words possibly have in common? Well, they're all associated with something called Pizzagate. Now, in case you haven't heard of Pizzagate, or in case you don't remember it, it was a viral internet sensation centered around the presence of alleged code words in the leaked emails of Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta. Apparently the words pizza, hot dog, cheese, and pasta appeared an inordinate amount of times in the emails and led people to speculate that they were actually being used as coded messages for pedophilia-related activities. And from this, people concluded that high-ranking politicians and Hollywood celebrities were involved in a vast satanic child trafficking ring that was centered in a little pizza shop called Comet Ping Pong. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. There's no way this could be true. How could something this utterly insane possibly have even a smidge of truth to it? Well, let's just put it this way for starters. Mark Twain once said that truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities and truth isn't. Now, this quote is absolutely relevant to Pizzagate because it's an example of something that does not in any way stick to what's perceived as possible. It doesn't fit with people's general viewpoint of the world. It exists beyond what society would consider normal, and because of that, it's immediately dismissed and labeled as preposterous. This demonstrates the irony of Mark Twain's statement. He says that fiction has to stick to possibilities, and truth doesn't. But the ironic part is that when something doesn't conform to generally accepted possibilities, even if it turns out to be true, people will think of it as fiction. And this is exactly the case with Pizzagate, as you'll see. Okay, first things first. Whenever you do a search on Pizzagate, there's 3 things you're immediately going to come across. The emails, the Jimmy Comet Instagram, and the collages. These 3 things are almost always hyped up and cited as the premier evidence of the scandal, which is a real shame, because really all they are just hastily strung together assumptions and misinformation. Yeah, that's right, I just said that. Sorry to break your balls, fellow Pizzagators, but it's true. The code words in the emails, there's no possible way of definitively knowing that they're used in the context of pedophilia. Sure, they might seem like they're used in odd contexts at times, but really, it's nothing more than just speculation, and sometimes not even good speculation at that. Like the one where Tony says to John he'd love to get a pizza for an hour. That's not really unusual. Doesn't mean they're gonna spend a full hour eating pizza. They'll eat for some of the time and then have conversation for the rest. It's what people do. Personally, I think there's only 2 of the emails that I think are noteworthy, but I'm not going to get into them now. Next, you have the Instagram account of Comet Ping Pong owner James Alefantis. Most of the pictures are rather inoffensive pictures of children. There's a couple, though, that people get up in arms about, like this picture. While it doesn't definitively point to child trafficking, it is rather unsettling and pretty creepy, as this guy astutely points out. But most of the others are just the product of more baseless speculation. Like with the emails, there are some noteworthy details about the Jimmy Comet page that I'm not going to delve into right now. And finally, we have the other dubious stuff that people pass around like it's Exhibit A. This picture juxtaposes John and Tony Podesta with 2 police sketches from the Madeleine McCann disappearance of 2007, suggesting that the Podestas were responsible. And I'll admit, they do look suspiciously similar, but British police said that the 2 sketches were of the same guy, not 2 different people. Again, it's really open to interpretation and certainly not definitive proof of anything. And then you got this stupid crap, I'm not even going to say anything about it. So the emails, the Insta, and the collages are nothing more than a bunch of noise. And those 3 things are just about the entire basis of the mainstream media's debunking of Pizzagate. Well, that and pretty much just taking Alefantis' word that he's not a pedophile and trying to make him out as the victim. So in other words, the media didn't really debunk Pizzagate. They just zeroed in on some trivial details, pointed out the obvious, and then slapped a fake news sticker on the whole thing. But Pizzagate is absolutely not fake news. Just the viral aspects of it are fake. Pizzagate as a whole is so much more than just the emails, the Instagram, and the collages. What this whole thing really is the global sex trafficking of children by the ruling class of society. Businessmen, politicians, entertainers, and financiers. There are more than enough real-world occurrences and patterns showing that this is very much a real thing. And before we get into those, it's important to see where the mainstream media stands on the issue of elite pedophile rings.
They've accused all of these people, from celebrities to politicians, of being a part of a child sex ring that simply does not exist.
What they believe to be global pedophile networks amongst the elites all over the world. So they have no evidence for this. It's really crazy stuff.
Right-wing online community that pushes false conspiracy theories, including that a child sex ring is being run by Hollywood celebrities and Democratic politicians.
In this fringy alternate universe, senior Democrats run a secret child sex trafficking network. In the real world, they do not.
You got all that? So according to all the reputable news outlets, the institutions we normally rely on to tell us the truth, child sex trafficking among the world's elite is just a wild fantasy with no evidence supporting its existence. Remember that. So exactly how deep does this issue run amongst the upper echelons of society? Appallingly deep. Let's just say, if you thought Tiger King was the craziest true crime story of our time, think again. Now every long list has a beginning, and at the beginning of this list is Dennis Hastert, former Speaker of the House who is convicted of molesting numerous underage boys. Robert Menendez, New Jersey Senator who had sex with Dominican child prostitutes. Mike Folger, State Senator, arrested for child porn. Democrat donor Terry Bean, indicted for having sex with a 15-year-old boy. George Nader, who worked unofficially for the Bush and Clinton administrations, was arrested 3 times between 1985 and 2003 for child porn and child sex abuse, and then again in 2019 for child porn. Ex-State Department employee sentenced for child porn. California Deputy Attorney General, child porn. Aide to Democrat rep, soliciting underage prostitute. Ex-GOP Arizona lawmaker, paying boys for sex. Tennessee State Rep, sexual misconduct with teens. And now over to the Pentagon, which had nearly 5,000 employees using Department of Defense computers to share child porn. The issue was so severe they actually had to come up with a bill to curtail it. And all this is just here in the United States. Over in the UK, we have the issue of the British establishment covering up a VIP pedophile ring in Westminster. In the 1980s, British Member of Parliament Geoffrey Dickens compiled a dossier about a suspected pedophile ring he uncovered that was connected to trading child pornography. It wasn't until the mid-2010s that the dossier's claims were finally investigated, and a recent inquiry found that police and politicians knew about widespread child abuse but turned a blind eye to it. Both the Liberal and Conservative parties of Britain knew about the alleged child abuse committed by MPs Peter Morrison and Cyril Smith, but chose to protect them from prosecution. And 2 people were apparently killed in order to protect this pedophile ring, as alleged by John Mann of the Labour Party. Over in Norway, 20 individuals, including politicians, police officers, and lawyers, were arrested for being part of a pedophile ring. Portugal had another pedophile ring consisting of politicians and media personalities. Egypt busted 75 people, including government officials, for human trafficking back in 2018. And need I even mention the Catholic Church, which has spent nearly $4 billion in regards to its whole child molestation crisis. So as you can see, child abuse amongst the upper class is definitely a rampant issue that's real and documented. But all those people I just mentioned, tip of the iceberg. I didn't just list all the high-level child predators that ever existed, I only listed the ones that have been caught so far. This thing is more pervasive and far-reaching than you could ever imagine. Plenty of whistleblowers have come forth and attested to this, like Peter McKelvey, a former child protection manager, who stated that 20 VIPs were part of an elite child sex ring, and former United Nations chief Andrew McLeod, who says the UN is turning a blind eye to child rapes being committed by its own peacekeepers. The United Nations is raping children. The facilitation of these child rapes is in part funded by the UK taxpayer. One of the reasons I left the UN is because I call them the second largest harborer of pedophiles behind only the Catholic Church. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the UN is worse. We also have whistleblowers coming from US government and military-industrial complex backgrounds who are speaking out about VI pedophilia.
I think it's huge, and I have been advised by a particular person that the CIA, and they're aware that these things are going on. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, they don't consider it probably part of their mission. And two, that some of the people that are involved in this, the Department of Justice, in my view, under Loretta Lynch, actually suppressed some of these cases, stopped the NYPD from coming out from Anthony Weiner's life insurance file on his computer, which revealed some disgusting, sounds like alleged pedophilia stuff. Loretta Lynch and the Department of Justice shut the NYPD down. They were going to come out public. So there's been some Department of Justice activity in suppressing some of these things. It is absolutely clear to me that this does involve elected officials in Washington, to include congressmen and senators.
There are over 500,000 missing children in the United States. On Halloween, Virginia has 5 times the average of missing children than across the nation. Washington, D.C. is ground zero for pedophilia among the elite.
By the way, this conspiracy involves pornography, drugs, corruption, involves pedophilia, involves organized child kidnapping rings, the finders out of Washington, D.C., CIA cover, covert operation, involved in the international trafficking of children.
So there's definitely people in well-placed positions within major institutions who know this is real and are speaking out about it. But as with every despicable crime, elite pedophilia and child trafficking also has its victims.
Richard Kerr has suffered for over 30 years in silence, blocking out the horrors of his past at the hands of what he describes as very powerful people. As a teenager, he was introduced to the world of Westminster. He says he was trafficked from Northern Ireland and that this picture was taken by one of his abusers.
I was used as a boy toy. I was an object, a sexual object.
Rumours of an alleged paedophile ring in the top echelons of society have been circulating for years. But for the first time, Richard's account of what happened to him as a boy links 3 locations. A cottage industry of conspiracy theories has built up around this story, but Richard insists a VIP paedophile ring did exist, and it's time for the truth to be told.
They were men who had control and power over others.
They were politicians, you believe?
Some I do.
My name is Annika Lucas. I am a mom. I have pets. And I'm currently the leader of an organization that brings yoga into prisons. I'm also a survivor of child sex trafficking. I was raised in Belgium and sold into a murderous pedophile network right around my 6th birthday. I was used in this network for 5 years and a half. Adult men that were part of this exclusive club were there for various reasons, but there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, and the children were the commodity, the highest, the most valued commodity, and were used for sex mostly. But there were a number of aristocrats that were part of this club who also liked killing children.
My whole life I traveled all over the world and would go to some of the biggest events to meet clients.
On the outside, her clients were pillars of their communities.
They were in law enforcement, doctors, psychiatrists, judges, politicians, even people who owned sports teams. They were all extremely rich and prominent members of society. I attended many parties for people who had just got elected into office.
But behind closed doors, she says they were sinister and evil human beings.
Sometimes they would bring little boys into the room and they would make me have sex with them. Many of the boys were as young as 5.
Now, you weren't allowed to use the word trafficked, correct? Why is that?
I was made for that, and trafficking is when girls who aren't made for that get kidnapped or sold into it.
Did he tell you how you came to be with him?
My parents had me for him.
That they actually had you on purpose for him?
Yeah.
Do you remember how old you were when you first had sex?
I was used to it by the time I was 2.
This last woman brought up a very important point. Not all sex trafficking victims are kidnapped. Some are born into it. These elite pedophile networks use some of their female captives as breeders to bear them more children, who are then promptly passed around as a commodity. So now you see that high-level child sex rings of the establishment are 100% real and not some insane right-wing fever dream like the mainstream media says it is. Real people have stepped forward to expose it. Real people have suffered and had their lives ruined by it. And this certainly isn't limited to just politics. Oh no, I haven't even touched on Hollywood. In 2013, actor Corey Feldman gave this interview with ABC News telling us about Hollywood's big bad secret.
I can tell you that the #1 problem in Hollywood was and is and always will be pedophilia. That's the biggest problem for children in this industry.
The casting couch even applies to children.
Oh yeah. Not in the same way. It's all done under the radar.
Nobody talks about pedophilia.
It's the big secret.
And it's widespread?
Oh yeah. I was surrounded by them when I was 14 years old. Surrounded.
In addition to Feldman, we also had actor Elijah Wood come out and say that Hollywood has a huge pedophile problem. And just a month or two ago, professional heavyweight boxer David Rodriguez posted this video on social media.
I don't think you understand how prevalent these pedophile rings really are in Hollywood and in the sports arenas, in Hollywood, in the political arena. I mean, everywhere, man. It's bad, and it's human trafficking, you know, and sex trafficking is the hottest thing, the biggest commodity right now. And I think once this all comes out to the surface, a lot of you are going to be disgusted and feel very dirty for even knowing the information.
He's right. It really is bad. It's so rampant that there was even a whole documentary made on the subject called An Open Secret. So who do we have on the busted list? Well, there's Oscar-winning director Roman Polanski, who was charged in 1978 with raping a 13-year-old girl. Then there's Kevin Spacey, who was first accused by actor Anthony Rapp of molesting him when he was 14. Since then, he's been hit with a whopping 15 accusations, some of them also about Spacey raping people when they were underage, and 3 of his accusers all died within a year. Okay, who else? Bryan Singer of X-Men and Usual Suspects fame has been accused many times over the years of molesting underage boys. Victor Salva, Jeepers Creepers fame, Jeeper Creepered his way into being convicted of child porn and sexually assaulting a 12-year-old. R. Kelly was arrested last July for child sex crimes and child pornography. Woody Allen, although not convicted, has been accused by his adopted daughter Dylan Farrow of molesting her when she was 7. Accusations that have received renewed interest in the wake of #MeToo. Former Disney Vice President Michael Laney was convicted last year of child sex abuse. I'll be talking about Disney later on. X-Men actor Brian Peck was convicted of molesting a Nickelodeon child star, and yet is still allowed to be on set with children, only in Hollywood. Sterling Van Wagenen, co-founder of Sundance Film Festival, pleaded guilty to sexually abusing an underage girl. And then we have Tom Weisom, animator on My Little Pony, sentenced for child pornography. Now obviously these aren't all the people in showbiz who've been pinched for pedophilia. I'm not going to spend my time listing every single person who's gone down for this, just enough to show you how real and how broad this is. But there's other, more disturbing indicators that point to a full-blown infestation of child predators in Tinseltown, among them big-name celebrities, household names. Among the aforementioned indicators are a series of tweets from numerous celebrities, tweets that they'd rather you not see. From comedian Patton Oswalt, "My dong is super friendly and loves getting rubbed by children." The angry @tweets from my hammer-toed followers open my eyes. "Pedophobe shaming hurts us all. I am a proud pedophile." Comedian Michael Ian Black, "My day so far, mini wheats, writing, quick baby fuck, more writing, picked up kids from school. Went to my kids' elementary school Halloween parade, disappointingly few slutty girl costumes." Anthony Jeselnik, "I'm an amateur photographer, never taken anything I'm proud of, just children having sex. I want to have sex with you, baby, but if you don't want me to have sex with you, baby, too bad, cause you're just a baby." Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight on The Office, "Little concerned, this morning I found blood in my urine. Well, not my urine, the baby urine I washed my hair with. If you want to punish a teenager, simply take away their cell phone and sodomize him with it." And then we have the old tweets of Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn that resurfaced in 2018. "I like it when little boys touch me in my silly place. Shh. The Expendables was so manly, I fucked the shit out of the little pussy boy next to me. 3 men and a baby they had sex with. #unromantic movies." Now you think that he'd be widely condemned for the tweets. Nope. The mainstream media and the blue checkmarks rushed his defense and painted him as a victim of the diabolical right-wing trolls who committed the heinous crime of digging up the old tweets. Now some people might look at all these tweets and write them off as just dark jokes or attempts at being edgy, and I say no, they're not. And this is coming from me, somebody who has a horrible sense of humor. Deadass, I go on Reddit and browse memes like these. So I know what good edgy humor is, and these tweets are not that. They're vulgar and in very poor taste. Some of these don't even read like jokes. There's no setup nor punchline. If anything, they read more like straight-up statements. And this begs the old proverb, "Many a true word hath been spoken in jest." In other words, these guys are openly flaunting their pedophilic tendencies, but in the form of jokes, if they can even be called that. Because I sure as hell ain't laughing, and I don't think any of you watching this are either. And you're definitely not going to be laughing at what I'm about to show you next. It's a comedy skit with Will Ferrell playing the owner of a store that rents out child clowns. Yup, that is real. That is really Will Ferrell beating little children and talking about keeping them in cages. I told you big names are implicated in this. And if you're a Rick and Morty fan, you're not going to like this next clip. It's the show's creator, Dan Harmon, and he's so
that later tonight, when I'm crawling in your window, I can count on you to sleep like a baby. Well, I do everything but sleep with yours.
Ugh, I need to go wash my eyes out with Clorox after seeing that. Thinly veiled jokes aren't the only way that Hollywood hides its pedophilia in plain sight. In this music video by Miley Cyrus for her song Baby Talk, Miley is dressed up in a baby outfit and does all sorts of seductive poses. Think about that for a second. A baby is doing seductive sexy dancing. And to make matters worse, one of the lyrics of the song is "Fuck me so you stop baby talking." Now the song itself is about Miley being fed up with her boyfriend doing baby talk, but the music video adds a whole nother really messed up context. We essentially have a baby telling a grown man to fuck her. The only kind of people I can imagine enjoying something like this are pedophiles. Now another asset pedowood likes to deploy are these symbols, seen here in this FBI document, listing them as symbols used by pedophiles to signal their preferences. The symbols are a lesser known but more blatant way for the big showbiz perverts to convey that they're into the youngins that would surely fly over almost anybody's head unless they were familiar with the symbols. The boy lover symbol is the more prevalent one, which appears in this CBS reality show, in Season 4, Episode 14 of ABC's The Goldbergs, and more recently on the poster for Dora and the Lost City of Gold, within the letters themselves. Fun fact, 2 of Nickelodeon's creators, Kit and Geraldine Laybourne, appear on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita flight logs. So yeah, Hollywood is definitely sprawling with child molesters. I'd say Los Angeles deserves the title of Sin City much more than Las Vegas does. The issue of elite child trafficking and abuse has received plenty of interest in the years since Pizzagate went viral, but by then this phenomenon had already been going on for quite a long time. And Pizzagate isn't the first time little bits of this stuff slipped out into the public's eye. Indeed, many other scandals of its kind got a glimmer of public scrutiny before dissipating as quickly as they came about. 3 of these scandals happened around the same time in the late 1980s, starting with the Finders cult. In October of 2019, the FBI released a whole treasure trove of documents pertaining to an alleged satanic cult called the Finders that was supposedly trafficking children. The Finders first came to the attention of law enforcement in February 1987, when 2 members of the group were arrested by the Tallahassee Police Department on misdemeanor child abuse charges from a complaint that 6 children under their supervision were unkempt and neglected. Information developed subsequent to the arrest linked these individuals to 2 locations in the Washington, D.C. area. Shortly after that, the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department obtained warrants and conducted a search of a warehouse that unearthed documents that concerned international trafficking in children, and wallet-sized photos of children, some of whom were naked. But they also found something much more disturbing. Pictures of children involved in bloodletting ceremonies of animals, and another photograph of a child in chains. After the arrests and searches were made, the police found evidence of sexual abuse involving more than 1 of the 6 children, and 2 state officials also determined that at least 2 of the children had been sexually abused. So what came of all this? Well, the Washington MPD gave a public statement saying that they uncovered no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing by members of the group, saying that their practices were odd but not criminal. What? Police in Virginia and the district said yesterday they have uncovered no evidence of satanic practices, cult rituals, child pornography, or any other criminal wrongdoing associated with the communal group known as the Finders. During the course of the search warrants, numerous documents were discovered which appeared to be concerned with international trafficking in children. Police in Washington raided 2 buildings belonging to the Finders last Thursday and found numerous pictures, including some of nude children and children taking part in animal sacrifices. Additional search warrant executed on farm in rural Virginia with support by Virginia State Police. Evidence of satanic and cult ritual discovered. Tallahassee police said last week that 2 or more of the children taken into custody had been sexually abused. Police in Virginia and the district said they uncovered no evidence of satanic practices, child porn, or any other criminal wrongdoing associated with the Finders. So at first you have documentation showing that these investigators found evidence of child abuse and occult activities occurring at the different Finders properties, and then you have the police departments publicly stating that they found no evidence of such things? What? Do pictures of naked children not count as child porn pornography? Do pictures of children butchering animals not count as proof of satanic cult rituals? Is the sky not blue? Is water not wet? Is Stevie Wonder not blind? So in essence, these two police departments and the U.S. Customs found incriminating evidence against the finders and then covered it up, probably at the behest of an outside entity. Redacted contacts MPD intelligence and advised that all reports regarding the finders are to be classified at the secret level. Most likely that's what happened. Now here's the real juicy part of this story. The CIA has its fingerprints on this finders group, and there is an investigation of this by local and federal law enforcement. The Department of Justice has requested the FBI conduct a preliminary inquiry into allegations made by Redacted concerning child sexual abuse by a group known as the Finders, and what role, if any, was played by the United States intelligence community. Damn! Miami Division at Tallahassee, Florida, through liaison into the Tallahassee, Florida Police Department, review their investigative files concerning the finders, blah blah blah, and determine if any outside agency, notably the U.S. intelligence community, attempted to influence the outcome of their investigation. Now, the Tallahassee police chief did say that there was never any outside agency in the U.S. intelligence community who contacted anyone in his department with an attempt to influence their investigation into the finders. But come on, are we really supposed to take his word for it? Especially after these same police departments told people that they never found evidence of the finders' criminality when they actually did? For all we know, this guy could have been threatened by the CIA to give that exact statement. Besides, there's other law enforcement officials that would gladly beg to differ. It is this writer's belief that the Finders organization is and has been utilized by the Central Intelligence Agency as a disinformation service spreading non-essential, non-critical information to various organizations throughout the United States and overseas. And this guy certainly wouldn't be wrong. The founder of the Finders cult, Marion David Petit, has direct connections to the CIA through the fact that his late wife once worked for the agency, and that his son worked for a CIA proprietary firm, Air America, which was hit with allegations of smuggling opium and heroin that were supported by a bunch of people. So yes, there are confirmed ties between the CIA and a satanic cult that was involved in child abuse. Take a second to acknowledge the gravity of that. It was also believed that the finders were part of a much more organized effort. Subsequently, Redacted has attempted to interest congressional members and the U.S. Customs Service to enhance efforts in investigating claims of organized child abuse. Redacted alleges that the finders are involved in a well-organized child abuse scheme. And this dude would be right on the money, because a U.S. Customs special agent claimed to have found in one of the property searches a substantial amount of computer equipment and documents purportedly containing instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes. And recall the fact that the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police found documents pertaining to international trafficking of children. But by far, the most incredible revelation of these finders' documents is one that relates to another 80s child abuse scandal, the McMartin preschool case. The scandal saw members of the McMartin family, who operated a preschool in California, being charged with numerous acts of sexual abuse of children in their care. There were also allegations of the same children being subjected to satanic rituals, which was said to have occurred in secret tunnels beneath the school, but they apparently never found evidence of said tunnels, and this is one of the reasons why the case was ultimately dismissed. However, one of the documents from the recently released Finders files reveals that they actually did find tunnels underneath the preschool. And not only did they find the tunnels, but they found a small white plastic plate with 3 pentagrams hand-drawn upon it. This is absolutely remarkable because they really did find evidence corroborating the allegations of satanic ritual abuse in secret subterranean tunnels. This document effectively rewrites the entire McMartin preschool case. Around the same time of the Finders investigations and the McMartin trials, another ritualistic child abuse scandal was unfolding over at Presidio Military Base. As first reported by the New York Times, a whopping 60 children were allegedly abused at Presidio's daycare centers, and almost 100 were examined for physical and psychological signs of sexual abuse. At least 4 children were discovered to have chlamydia. Well, there you have it. Children in this case were found to have an STD. Only way that could happen is if they were molested by a grown-up. As for all the other children, the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry wrote an extensive analysis where they concluded that the severity of the trauma for children at the Presidio was immediately manifest in clear-cut symptoms, including genital soreness, rashes, fear of the dark, so on, so on. All these behavioral symptoms are to be expected in preschool children that have been molested. And Presidio wasn't the only military base where this depravity was occurring. A 16-member Army review team recently inspected the Presidio Center as part of an investigation of the almost 300 child care centers run by the Army. Allegations of sexual abuse had surfaced at more than 10% of these centers since 1984. Among them were the centers at Fort Dix in New Jersey and the United States Military Academy at West Point. As first reported by San Jose Mercury News, in July 1984, a 3-year-old girl was brought to the emergency room at West Point Hospital. The child told the doctor who examined her that a teacher at the West Point Daycare Center was the one who hurt her. In August, another parent came forward. By the end of the year, 50 children had been interviewed by investigators. Children at West Point told stories that would become horrifyingly familiar. They said they had been ritually abused. They said they had excrement smeared on their no. Despite all the children that were found to have displayed clear signs of being abused, nothing really came of the Presidio daycare case. Only one man was charged, Gary Hambright, a civilian employee who oversaw the daycare center. But the judge presiding over the case deemed the charges as too vague, and Hambright walked free. No other persons were charged, and the US government quietly closed the case against Presidio itself. So once again, we have the government opting to silently sweep a high-level child abuse case under the rug, despite clear signs and evidence of children being abused. The US Army was in no hurry to investigate the claims of child abuse. It took them 12 days to form a strategy group, and nearly a month passed before they notified other parents of the daycare that child abuse allegations had been made. Well, gee, that's not an abnormal way of handling things that totally reeks of guilt and attempted cover-up. Amidst all the wickedness and suppressions of wickedness, there's a notorious figure that stands out, and his name is Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, a military intelligence officer specializing in psychological warfare and an open practitioner of Satanism who left LaVey's Church of Satan to form the Temple of Set. While all the child victims of Presidio were being interviewed, both Aquino and his Satanist wife Lilith were positively ID'd as two of the perpetrators.
He was occupied a position at the Presidio, which was a training facility for the U.S. government, and it was uncovered that he was running a pedophile ring. I think 50 kids came out and fingered him as the guy that had done sexual acts on them as children.
Indeed, Michael Aquino was certainly involved in the Presidio daycare abuse, but that wasn't the only case of child ritual abuse that he was linked to. In 1985, allegations of ritual abuse at the Fort Bragg Daycare Center erupted when several children reported being abused by a number of people at the daycare center and several other locations, including 2 churches. Lieutenant Colonel Aquino was ID'd as having been present at one of those churches, but there's a much larger, even more extensive pedophile scandal that Aquino was involved up to his weird frickin' eyebrows in. The pinnacle of the 1980s child trafficking cases, the Franklin scandal. The year is 1988 in Omaha, Nebraska. One man was quickly rising as a star in the Republican Party, so much so that he was scheduled to sing the national anthem at the 1988 Republican National Convention. This man was Larry King. No, not that Larry King, this guy, Lawrence E. King, who ran the Franklin Federal Credit Union and was about to be the center of a monumental web of debauchery and perversion. He was accused by 7 children of child abuse and prostitution before he sang the national anthem at the RNC. Among the first accusers was Euless Washington, who claimed King flew her out of state for pedophilic orgies. Despite passing various lie detector tests, charges were never brought against King nor his cousins, the Webbs. More rumors of sexual abuse began to arise, with multiple allegations that Larry King was using children from Boys Town, the nearby Catholic charitable institution for orphan youth. The federal and local authorities immediately moved to close the investigation and seal evidence, claiming the allegations of child abuse were unfounded. And as it turns out, the authorities never interviewed Euless Washington and the other children until 3 years after the initial allegations allegations were made. Once again, we have unusual steps taken by law enforcement that indicate that they're trying everything they can to not conduct a proper investigation. Despite all this, Omaha Police Chief Robert Wadman told the press with a straight face that every step that should have been taken was taken. But he later confessed that he never even contacted Euless Washington. And here's the kicker. Wadman would later be identified as a child abuser at King's parties by 4 different victims. Well, how about that? The police chief was himself involved in Larry King's pedophile ring. It seems you can never trust the authorities when it comes to these cases of large-scale child abuse. But a group of 12 state senators decided to be good boys and create their own commission to investigate the charges. The leader of this commission, Senator Lawrence Schmidt, followed the money trail and quickly found that it could be traced directly to the sex parties and child abuse. And you know how you know he was pulling on some pretty major threads? 'Cause this happened. I received a phone call on the floor of the legislature. The caller would not identify himself, but he said, "Lauren, you do not want to have an investigation of the Franklin Federal Credit Union." And I said, "Well, why not?" And he said, "It will reach the highest levels of the Republican Party." Highest levels of the Republican Party. Senator Schmidt wasn't the only one who received threats. So did the lead investigator of the State Senator Committee, Gary Caradori. Now, Caradori took a trip to Chicago in July 1990 to meet with a secret informant who had evidence that would apparently blow the lid off the case. He confided in a friend that he was one step ahead of those who wanted to squash the investigation and said that if they knew what information he had, he'd be killed. And guess what happened next? He and his son died in a plane crash during the return flight from Chicago. You tell me if it had anything to do with him being on the verge of blowing the lid off the Franklin case, as he himself stated. So who exactly was this secret informant that Caradori was meeting? Why, Rusty Nelson, a photographer who was present at Larry King's pedo parties. He later testified to the district court that he photographed Police Chief Robert Wadman having sex with minors at several of the parties. So why was there a photographer taking pictures of people at these parties? Most likely for blackmail purposes. The Franklin case eventually saw 3 victim witnesses, Troy Boner, Alicia Owens, and Paul Bonacci, testifying about their experiences. In interviews with Gary Caradori, Boner, Owens, and Bonacci corroborated each other's stories without initially knowing about each other's roles in the investigation. What happened next was absolutely astonishing. A New York Times article, which is now a broken link, confirmed that the state was given thousands of files regarding sexual abuse of children. But instead of indicting the perpetrators, the grand juries labeled the Franklin case a carefully crafted hoax and ordered all those files to be sealed. They then charged all the victims with perjury, despite concluding that they were in fact abused. Lawyer and psychiatrist Dr. Judy-Ann Denson Gerber rightfully said that this is unprecedented, probably in the history of the United States. If the children are not telling the truth, particularly if they have been abused, they need help, medical attention. You don't throw them in jail. So the grand juries did all this without ever calling Larry King himself to testify. And Alicia Owens' attorney discovered that the videos of Boner and Owens being interviewed by Gary Caradori had all the parts where they corroborated each other's stories edited out. So somebody tampered with the evidence. It's pretty obvious why all this happened, because clearly prominent Republican politicians, some going up to the national level, were part of this child trafficking ring. The only kind of people who can get a lead investigator murdered and victims thrown in jail are powerful people in high-up positions who are capable of pulling major strings. As with the Finers cult in the Presidio military base, nothing ever came of the Franklin scandal. Nobody was ever charged or brought to justice. The closest this case ever got to getting the public scrutiny it deserved was a documentary called Conspiracy of Silence that was supposed to air on the Discovery Channel. It was pulled last minute on the day it was supposed to air. No explanation was ever given. There's also the book The Franklin Cover-Up, written by Nebraska State Senator and Prosecutor John DeCamp, who was also involved in the Franklin investigation and appeared in the Conspiracy of Silence documentary.
Obviously, the FBI was protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of old pedophiles having improper relations with little boys. They were protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of drug peddlers. They were protecting, in my opinion, they were protecting some very prominent politicians, some very powerful and wealthy individuals associated with those politicians and the political system up to and including the highest political people in this entire country.
DeCamp would eventually go on to help Paul Bonacci win a $1 million lawsuit against Larry King in 1999, in which the federal judge ruled that Bonacci was truthful in his testimony. That same year, Bonacci positively identified Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, the same creepy dude from Presidio, as an associate of Larry King. Rusty Nelson, King's personal photographer, also identified Aquino as the man he once saw King give a briefcase full of money and bearer bonds to. So Aquino is tied up with Presidio, Fort Bragg, and Franklin, along with a few other lesser-known child abuse cases. This guy is basically the Forrest Gump of pedophile scandals, and to this day, despite being identified as an abuser by dozens of children, still has yet to see his day in court. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the United States criminal justice system. The Franklin pedophile cover-up wasn't the first of its kind, and certainly wasn't the last. Around the same time in the 1990s, a similar scandal was unfolding over in Belgium. Marc Dutroux was a notorious pedophile and child killer who was first arrested back in 1986 on rape and abduction charges. Jailed in 1989, he was released on parole after just 3 years. In 1995 and 96, he kidnapped 6 girls and murdered 2 teenagers. 2 of his 8-year-old captives starved to death in his cellar. Around that time, Belgium's highest court removed a magistrate widely seen as a hero in the scandal, Jean-Marc Connereau, who was investigating Dutroux. This act by the Belgian court sparked a widespread public outcry and soon led to the White March, a demonstration of 300,000 people protesting the justice system's handling of the Dutroux case. Now, just why did the courts decide to ditch Connereau like that? Maybe it was because Connereau was on the verge of disclosing the names of senior government officials who had been recognized on confiscated videotapes and during allegations of a high-level cover-up. That's right, Dutroux wasn't just some lone wolf psychopath. He was part of a much larger, more connected pedophile organization that included some very powerful Belgian players. But don't take my word for it. Dutroux himself even claimed he was part of a pedophile network. And Dutroux's accomplice, Miquel Lelivre, also attested to Dutroux being part of something broader, stating, "Mark always told me that he kidnapped girls for people who placed an order with him." So obviously, Judge Connereau was onto this pedo network, and the Belgian courts had to get rid of him in order to prevent prominent people from going down. And you know how you know the courts were desperate to remove him? They dismissed him on the grounds that he compromised his impartiality by accepting a free dinner at a fundraiser for the parents of missing children. Seriously? You don't use something that trivial as a means for removing a magistrate unless you're desperately trying to prevent him from going public with whatever he has, as was clearly the case with Connereau. So Marc Dutroux, on his own admission and on the admission of his accomplice Lelivre, was part of a wider pedophile network, but he certainly wasn't top dog. No, the man that Judge Connereau and other investigators believed to be the brains behind the whole child trafficking operation was businessman Jean-Michel Nahoul. Ugh. Indeed, Dutroux's wife, Michelle Martin, also mentioned Dutroux and Nahoul working together. I have heard Mark personally telling Lelivre that he should bring a girl from Miquel Nahoul. If I haven't mentioned that before, that's because I'm afraid of that gang. I mean Nahoul, Marc Dutroux, and others in Brussels. I mean well-placed individuals who Nahoul knew. In May of 2002, investigative journalist Alenka Frankiel wrote an article called Belgium's Silent Heart of Darkness, in which she described meeting Nahoul in a Brussels restaurant. She writes, "He will never come to court because the information he has about important people in Belgium would bring the government down." So clearly, Nahoul and Dutroux were trafficking children for some very high-level Belgian folks. That's probably why the legal system's handling of the Dutroux case reeks of a cover-up. Countless hairs were found in Dutroux's dungeon where the 2 girls were held. The judge refused to have them tested for DNA evidence, even though the leading police investigator had begged him to have them analyzed, in order to know whether more people aside from Dutroux were involved in the crimes. The general prosecutor of the case said that she didn't believe that there was anyone else involved and thus didn't have the samples analyzed. She told investigative journalist Frankiel, yes, the same Frankiel who wrote this article, that all the hairs had been analyzed, and the results of the analysis? Nothing. But according to Frankiel, this wasn't wasn't true. Sources central to the investigation confirmed that in 2002 the hairs had still not been analyzed, which means that prosecutor woman lied. Another fishy detail is the fact that the judge overseeing the Dutroux case, Judge Van Espen, had a close relationship to Jean-Michel Nahul. Even more interesting, he was never removed from the case, unlike Judge Connereau. So yeah, more confirmation that the Belgian legal system was carrying out a cover-up. They removed Connereau for the heinous act of accepting a free dinner, and they don't even bat an eye towards Van Espen, who's closely associated to Nahul, presenting a huge conflict of interest. A cover-up was certainly perpetrated here, and the parents of Dutroux's victims, along with many other Belgian citizens, agreed. Dutroux was not acting alone, they say, but was part of a wider pedophile ring which included policemen and senior members of the establishment. Why else would there have been such a delay in going to trial? Couldn't have said it better myself. The Dutroux affair and the ensuing cover-up demonstrates a very important point, that powerful elite pedophiles are not just limited to the United States. They're international. They operate pretty much under the same MO, and when they're in jeopardy of being uncovered, they're quick to pull strings in the justice system to prevent exposure by any means necessary. The next major case of high-level pedophilia and cover-ups wouldn't unfold again until 2013 over in Italy. Then Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi was convicted that year of paying for sex with then underage prostitute Ruby Rubicori while she was attending one of his bunga bunga parties. He was found guilty of the charges, but then had them overturned a year later after an appeal, though prosecutors said that wouldn't be the last of the case. Now here's where this story gets interesting. In 2018, ex-Moroccan model Iman Fadil, who was a witness during the trial, did an interview with Italian newspaper Il Fatto Quotidiano, where she said that satanic rituals took place in Berlusconi's private villa. She was even in the process of writing a book about it called I Met the Devil. When asked about why she was writing a book, she said, "Because I want to tell everything. This is not limited to a powerful man who had girls. There is much more to this story, much more serious things." Explain. This gentleman is part of a sect that invokes the devil. Yes, I know I'm saying something strong, but it's true. Many others know this. Know what? That continuous obscenities happen in that house, and I tell you, in that house there are disturbing presences. There's evil in there, I've seen it. There's Lucifer. Do you have proof? Please show it. No, not yet. I'll do it later. I just have to finish this book, and then the world will know. Unfortunately, she never got to publish the book because around the time she sought out a publisher, she died of poisoning. Even more telling is that she was poisoned with cadmium, a substance used in batteries and nuclear reactors, something that's not readily available to the general public. So clearly, this woman's allegations, as strange as they were, must have had some weight to them. If her story of satanic rituals really was just a crackpot fever dream, there would have been no need to kill her. You let her go public with her story, and then she makes a fool of herself and gets swept away by the widespread ridicule. But the fact that she was poisoned before she had a chance to publish her book clearly means that her story had at least some truth to it, and that somebody didn't want all the details of it getting out. Around the same time of Iman Fadil's death, the NXIVM sex cult case was just beginning in the United States.
A mysterious self-help group called NXIVM.
Suspected sex cult known as NXIVM.
Disturbing new allegations against the mysterious self-help group NXIVM.
An alleged cult leader and former network TV star both arrested on sex trafficking charges.
In March 2018, Keith Raniere, the founder of NXIVM, a supposed multi-level marketing company, was arrested on sex trafficking charges. Also arrested were NXIVM co-founder Nancy Salzman, Seagram Iris Claire Bronfman, and Smallville star Allison Mack. Hollywood actress involved in a sex trafficking cult. Surprise, surprise. Under the guise of being an executive success program, these bunch of weirdos inducted poor, unsuspecting women into a secret society-like group called DOS and subjected them to sexual slavery and mind control. The female victims also had Keith Raniere's initials branded on their bodies. Ugh, those look painful. After a lengthy trial that ended back in June of last year, Raniere was found guilty of all charges, which included sexual exploitation of a child and possession of child pornography. That's right, Raniere was a pedophile, and NXIVM was allegedly involved in child sex trafficking. In a detail completely omitted by the mainstream media, Keith Raniere was behind the establishment of Rainbow Cultural Gardens, a series of special schools set up throughout the Americas. The school in Miami, Florida was shut down not long after to Ranieri's arrest, and as it turns out, wasn't even licensed to operate. Hey, totally fine, nothing shady about that at all. But according to Frank Parlato, NXIVM's former publicist and coordinating producer on Investigation Discovery's Lost Women in NXIVM special, the Rainbow Schools were intended for a much more sinister purpose.
I think the probable result of Rainbow, had we not shut it down in the United States, it still is thriving in Mexico, and it still operates in France. But the probable goal was to produce young children that could be either sex trafficked or enjoyed, quote unquote, enjoyed by Ranieri at a very tender age. It was an invidious, nefarious, horrible program that was under the guise of helping children.
Indeed, some of the nannies that supervised the children at these schools were also part of Ranieri's sex trafficking scheme. But perhaps the most sensational part of the entire NXIVM story is Keith Ranieri's infatuation with Satanism and human sacrifice rituals.
He was fascinated by the concept of Lucifer and his fall, and he was a great fan of Milton's Paradise Lost. And what he did was he had a way of projecting when a person did not follow or obey his goals and his rules, he would describe them as a Luciferian. And yet, secretly, he gave out hints that he considered himself nothing less than Lucifer himself. There could have been sacrificial rites. I believe that Keith did believe that the sacrifice and murder of young people would bring him power.
That most likely was the case, because during the trial, the jury heard audio recordings taken by Allison Mack of Ranieri saying that he wanted the branding of his female slaves to mimic ritualistic human sacrifices. So those are all the major pedophilia and human trafficking cases from the 1980s all the way up to present day. And yes, I know what you're thinking right now. What about Jeffrey Epstein and his sex orgy island? Fear not, I'll be talking extensively about Epstein and his island in part 2. Believe me, there's so much more to that story that will absolutely blow your mind. But as of now, I'd like to make note of the common threads in each of the cases that I just covered. Firstly, every single case saw a cover-up being orchestrated to some extent or another. The first 4 cases I talked about, the Finders, Presidio, Franklin, and Dutroux, all had enormous efforts by law enforcement to make sure the lid stayed on and that the prominent people who were implicated never saw the light of public scrutiny. As for the Silvio Berlusconi scandal, a key witness died under very suspicious circumstances, and even with NXIVM, there were significant details that were completely ignored by the mainstream media. That's one linking thread. The other recurring motif is Satanism. Every case except the Dutroux scandal saw children being subjected not only to molestation, but to satanic ritual abuse as well. And this topic is where most people will draw the line. Not only is it outlandishly bizarre, but it's also a form of evil more extreme than what most people would normally comprehend. And for those reasons, people will immediately dismiss the Satanism aspect of Pizzagate as nothing more than a crackhead's delusion. But remember the old Mark Twain adage from the beginning, truth is stranger than fiction. And now we're entering the stranger side of Pizzagate. Satanism among the ruling class, just like pedophilia, is absolutely real. Whether or not you find that too hard to believe, or whether or not you want to believe it, it's true. I'm sorry.
When I was a police officer, we had cases of satanic cults right in Arlington, Virginia. Those have been around for decades. They're in the high schools, they're in the colleges, they're in the government, and they're in Hollywood.
And people came out of the woodwork from all parts of the country and started talking to me about satanic cults. This is what's behind the evil in this country today, in the government, at virtually every level of the government.
Maar er kwam een moment, toen werd ik dus uitgenodigd, daarom vertel ik dit ook, om mee te gaan doen aan offers in het buitenland. Dat was het breekpunt. Kinderen.
Oké. Dat werd je gevraagd.
Ja, ik kon het niet.
Look at his face. Look at how he tears up talking about it. That's genuine emotion right there. That's how you know this guy is for real. If he was just someone looking for attention, he'd be trying to sell himself and his story in any way possible. But I haven't seen any bestsellers from him. I haven't seen him trying to milk it on major talk shows. There's nothing from this guy where he's trying to make money off you. This guy was really in a truly horrible situation. Besides people coming out and sharing their experiences with it, there's another way we know that Satanists have lurked in the upper class of society, and it's been hidden in plain sight the entire time. Pop culture. That's right. Esoteric and occult symbols are generously pampered throughout all facets of media, sometimes subtly, sometimes right in your face. You've probably never noticed any of it, but trust me, it's so common. The extent of it will send shivers down your spine. Before we really go into how ubiquitous they are, there's a couple of these symbols I'd like to explain. First is the eye in the triangle, otherwise known as the all-seeing eye or the eye of providence. This symbol is thousands of years old and was commonly associated with the third eye. It's believed that when one activates or opens their third eye, they achieve enlightenment, hence why you'll often see it depicted with glowing rays around it. It's also associated with the concept of a greater force that watchfully observes all our thoughts and actions. This can be seen with ancient Egyptian myths of the sun god Ra or Horus, and as such, the symbol was called the Eye of Horus, and at times depicted atop a pyramid. Now mind you, the all-seeing eye symbol doesn't always have the triangle around it. A single eye is also used to represent the same thing. Very important that you know that. In more recent times, the all-seeing eye was adopted by esoteric and occult secret societies like the Freemasons. To them, the eye symbolizes the omnipresence of the great architect of the universe, who watches everything that happens in this world. Anyone else getting Orwellian Big Brother vibes from all this? Well, you certainly wouldn't be wrong to feel that. Here's the eye in the triangle on the headwear of notorious Satanist Aleister Crowley, who established his own occult society, OTO, and was also an MI6 agent and a Freemason. Speaking of Freemasons, another noteworthy symbol is the black and white checkerboard floor. This floor pattern can be found in nearly every Masonic lodge across the world. The colors black and white represent duality, a concept that's highly significant in Masonry and other mystery religions. This symbol also appears quite often in popular culture. Yeah, here it is on album covers. Here it is at fashion shows. Here's world-renowned fashion designer Michael Kors standing on the checkerboard floor. Here it is at his Manhattan penthouse, and here's the pattern on some of his products. Here's Rihanna performing in front of a checkerboard backdrop, and here's her wearing it. Taste the checkerboard, feel the checkerboard, bathe in the checkerboard. Do a family photo on the checkerboard. Alright, that's that. You ready to see more of the all-seeing eye? Because it's ready to see you. Bam! 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 This thing is freaking everywhere. All the major celebrities are doing it. Eminem, Rihanna, Michael Jackson, Bono, Lorde, Mac Miller, Travis Scott, Future, OBJ, Harrison Ford, Kevin Spacey, Ben Stiller. Just on and on and on and on and on. Here's Lady Gaga doing the one eye sign a bunch of times. Here's Beyonce throwing up the eye in the pyramid. No matter how much the quality of her music might fluctuate, the one thing that's consistent about her career is her doing the one eye sign. Now you don't have to go scrolling through all these pictures of celebrities to find this sign. Oh no. You can get a healthy dose of the all-seeing eye through pretty much any form of media that's ever been conceived. On magazine covers, on albums, movie and TV posters, and even in video games. Hell, here it is in promotional images for Fortnite. Fortnite, for God's sake. You can't get anywhere or do anything in show business without having to do this sign. You can't even graduate high school without having to do it. Nor can you go back to school. Jesus. Here's Pillsbury Doughboy throwing up the one eye sign. Even non-living characters have to do this. There is nowhere you can go without encountering this freaking symbol. This poor fella ended up purchasing it with their bread. And here it is outside my local Target. Even I have to run into this symbol, for Christ's sake. Obviously, all this symbolism is not some random coincidence. It's not just something that a few famous people decided to throw up here and there. This is clearly coordinated. And the fact that they have everybody doing this sign, from major celebrities to random people on magazine covers, shows that there is some omnipresent body that controls all aspects of popular culture. All aspects, down to the microscopic level. You don't get symbolism this pervasive across all forms of media without some sort of tightly organized structure that's pulling strings. And this structure clearly has an affinity for ancient esoteric symbols, but it has even more of an affinity for Satanism and the occult. Yeah. The music industry is especially rife with satanic overtones, and they just love shoving it in our unsuspecting faces. Here's The Weeknd flashing the word Satan out of the blue at one of his concerts. Here's Taylor Swift performing in front of a giant satanic-looking serpent at the 2018 American Music Awards. And check out the beginning of Madonna's performance at Eurovision 2019. Now, you most certainly don't have to pay for expensive-ass concert tickets to get a front row seat to Satan's decorative scheme. You can get plenty of that for free in the comfort of your own home. How dandy. YG's music video, In the Dark, starts with the rapper downing a bottle of tequila. Next thing you know, he's walking through a set of hellish gates and partying with the demons. Here's YG and the Hell Squad partying on a Masonic checkerboard floor. Here's blood dripping on an open Bible, because if there's one thing Satanists love doing, it's desecrating Christianity. And just when you thought this video couldn't get any more satanic, it starts raining blood and everyone is absolutely reveling in it. Now, when you consider the song by itself, it's really just YG repeating the lyric "in the dark" a bunch of times and then bragging about the usual stuff rappers brag about: money, bitches, and Lambos. So all this dark occult imagery in the music video really has no context here. It has nothing to do with the song itself. We don't need horned demon ladies and blood dripping on Bibles. And here's the thing, all that dark satanic kind of stuff is pretty much glorified in this video. Fetishized. YG is absolutely enjoying himself amidst all the dark occultism happening, and everybody seems to be really enjoying themselves when it's raining blood. Only kind of people who'd be loving that are psychopaths. Speaking of the devil, rapper Trippie Redd is about all things Satan. Here's an album cover of his with the 3 6s and the 1 eye symbol. Here's another album cover with the eye in the pyramid. Here's a pic of some inverted cross tats. Ugh, that's a cursed picture. You freaked out yet? Oh, wait till you see the music video for Topanga. Did I say music video? Sorry, I meant footage of a satanic ritual with his song Topanga playing in the background. Seriously, what the hell? You trying to get me to vibe out to some good beats, or you trying to get me to have frickin' nightmares? And once again, if you look at the lyrics of the song, it is about something else entirely. Nothing about Satanism or occult rituals is alluded to in the actual song. Up by Young Thug and Lil Uzi Vert. Right off the bat, we have a possessed-looking woman crawling on a checkerboard floor. We also got women made of checkerboards, women covered in all-seeing eyes, and this lady sporting horns and a facial pentagram. I'm sorry, what does taking coke and Molly and riding around Mexico have to do with Masonic checkerboards and horned demon ladies? Psst, hey. I got a little challenge for you. Say Lil Uzi Vert a couple times fast. Lil Uzi Vert, 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 Lil Lucifer, Lil Lucifer, Lil Lucifer. I rest my case. Love Me by Lil Wayne, a song I've personally enjoyed over the past couple years. Music video, not so much. We got a woman with a butterfly covering one of her eyes in the beginning. Then we have women in cages. And here's the icing on the cake. At the end of the video, we have 2 women crawling towards a bathtub full of blood, and then gleefully smearing said blood all over their bodies. What does this have to do with the rest of the song? You guessed it, absolutely freaking nothing. And here's Lil Wayne at a concert with a very curious necklace around his neck. Upon closer inspection, we see that it looks a lot like Baphomet, this freaky dude right here. He gets plenty of glorified cameos throughout pop culture. Now, a lot of people look at all this symbolism popping up in music videos and whatnot and dismiss it simply as the music industry being edgy. Oh, they're just being edgy, bro. They're just trying to troll you with all the satanic symbols. Well, what about when these satanic elements appear in children's shows? What do you say to that? Is it still edgy? Is it still all fun and games when they're putting occult symbols and content that's meant to be seen by children? That's how you know these guys are not playing around. So moving on, in 2015, Justin Bieber put out the music video for his song Where Are You Now, which is full of so quick it you miss it flashing imagery. Among the flashing images, kill the poor, love the devil back, handjobs for God. Then we got Justin sporting devil horns and a pitchfork with the words Jesus saves up above, cause Satanists love mocking Christianity. Here we have the all-seeing eye in the pyramid and the Masonic square and compass, this thing that's also seen here on Ashton Kutcher's hat. And then there's another eye in the pyramid drawn right over Justin. Billie Eilish. Bet I get a lot of hate from the tween girl fans of hers, but if you're familiar with her music videos, then you knew I was gonna bring her up at some point. Barry, a friend, sees Billie with black demonic eyes and levitating like something out of The Exorcist. All Good Girls Go to Hell literally starts with Billie being an angel falling from the sky, cause you know, Lucifer. The rest of the video needs no explanation. You see now how extensive this stuff is across the music industry, but don't think it's exclusive to here in America. Music around the world might be drastically different from what we listen to here, but the one thing that remains the same are the symbols that are displayed. Korean pop group TXT put out a video last year called Crown, and I don't think you need me at this point. French artist Gims, who's super popular over in France, fairly recently released a video called The Price to Pay that basically serves as an expose of the music industry. Seriously, they're like literally telling us how the music industry is actually run. Gims shows up in a room with all-seeing eyes and triangles framed on the background wall. He signs a contract with his blood. He gets to enjoy fame and women. He's at a meeting where they're working on his new album. Notice how all the suits are busy like bees while Gims just sits there glumly, almost as if he doesn't get any input in his own content. Indeed, they decide on an album cover that serves up the symbolism. His owners make all the money while he bears all the burdens, and eventually he decides he wants out. But guess what? You don't get out. You get two hooded figures grabbing you and taking you to a cult ceremony where it looks like you're about to be sacrificed. But the video ends with Gims actually getting away from the cult, which is rather surprising to say the least, especially since artists in real life don't tend to get as lucky as Gims got in the video. Take rapper XXXTentacion for instance. Here he is posing in front of a graffiti rendering of Baphomet. Here he is wearing a hat that says Team Satan 666. And here he is announcing on Instagram that he's terminating his deal with Capitol Records. Towards the bottom he says, I am not a signed artist and I will not be releasing music for a very long time. I'm tired of this shit. So as we see, he's saying he wants out of the music industry. And then he posts this live stream video.
Alright, let's say worst thing comes to worst, I fucking die a tragic death or some shit and I'm not able to see out my dreams. I at least want to know that the kids perceived my message and were able to make something of themselves and able to take my message and use it and turn it into something positive and to at least have a good life. I at least, if I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy.
Wait. What was that?
If I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice, if I'm gonna die or ever be a sacrifice.
If I'm ever gonna die or be a sacrifice. Very interesting choice of words. Indeed, he eventually died of gunshots on June 18th, 2018. 6/18/18, 666. And a few hours before his death, a Twitter account by the name Left Loafer cryptically tweeted, XXXTentacion will die today from a bullet wound. But perhaps the freakiest thing of all is that in the last music video he shot before he died, he was attending his own funeral. I know. And there's another case of this exact same thing happening. Tupac's last music video before he was killed showed him up in heaven amongst the angels. Are your minds blown? So more likely than not, now that we have an idea of how the music industry really works, X and Tupac probably knew that they'd be gone sooner or later, so they made these last music videos to foreshadow their coming demises. Right, so the entertainment industry is firmly rooted in the occult. I mean, for crying out loud, the name Hollywood itself refers to the holly tree, which is the tree that the druids used to make wands for casting spells. And although the holly tree is mostly rife with rotten apples, a few good apples have managed to speak out about the dark satanic underbelly of Tinseltown. In 2014, rapper Prodigy of hip-hop duo Mobb Deep linked an article about African pedophiles kidnapping children for voodoo rituals and tweeted, "I told y'all motherfuckers they doing sex rituals on kids. Dumbass people need to wake the fuck up." He died 3 years later, right as he was writing a musical about the Illuminati. Interesting. Last year, pro NFL running back Larry Johnson took to Twitter and had this to say, "Do not be fooled. This is a page out of the satanic pagan worship of the goat Baphomet. It's a ritual in plain view. Luciferian doctrine incorporates esoteric beliefs of alternate personalities, light and dark, good and evil." Exactly right. He's referring to the concept of duality that's so dear to many secret societies and occult orders. In another tweet, Johnson says, "I'm sorry it's hard for you to swallow that top-tier professional athletes of this generation are flirting with secret society and mystery Babylonian religions, Baal and Baphomet, that include disgusting sacrifices." But it's not just professional athletes flirting with mystery religions and ritual sacrifices. Everybody in the entertainment industry is getting in on it, and they sure as hell don't have any reservations in showing it. Here's some more disturbing celebrity tweets, like from Rainn Wilson. "Beautiful day for the ritual sacrification of a virgin. Anthony Jeselnik. Again, I will never understand how a mother can kill her own baby and not get away with it." B-movie maestro Lloyd Kaufman. "Toxie and I don't just follow at Heather Horror. We sacrifice small children to her. I love videology, but Friday I have a long-standing satanic baby sacrifice to attend." Here's pictures of horned guests from the 2017 Vogue Ball, and here's some pictures from the 2018 UNICEF Ball. Now here we have Celine Dion in an ad she did where she's promoting a gender-neutral clothing line. Here we see a baby wearing a onesie that says New Order, as in New World Order. Now what company was this advert for? A top-of-the-line clothing company called New that is very popular among celebrities. On their website we see Christina Aguilera, Hilary Duff, and John Legend and Chrissy Teigen in promo pics. Now this company has other promo pics of children that exemplify everything that is wrong in the upper class. This girl is wearing a shirt that says hoe on it, which everyone knows is slang for whore or prostitute. These two little girls are under a sign that says let's get physical, a common euphemism for sex. These two kids are wearing outfits with handprints on them, which really gives the vibe of people touching children. They also got the usual symbols, goat heads, horns, black and white patterns, and of course, the one-eye sign. And this is from a clothing line that's popular in Hollywood. Of course it is. There's also a French basket company called Ball and Tannet, which features relatively innocent pictures of children. Nothing wrong here, well, except for the fact that Ball and Tannet are ancient Babylonian deities that were worshipped through child sacrifice. This company definitely needs to be scrutinized and looked into. If you want even more occult symbolism, then look no further than the Instagram of Asia Argento, the woman who spearheaded #MeToo, until she had her own accuser in the form of a teenage boy, of course. Funny I should mention that though, because here's the first pic from her gram. A grown woman undressing a teenage boy. Yuck. Here she is doing the one-eye sign, wearing devil horns, and throwing up the Baphomet hand sign. And here she is holding a book that was written about Aleister Crowley, this guy. He was a notorious Satanist who's most remembered for starting the secret society OTO and for his occult practice called sex magic. Among his notable disciples is L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology, of which celebrities like Tom Cruise and John Travolta are part of. There's also other allusions to him throughout pop culture, like here on the album cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. Here's Led Zeppelin giving Crowley a shout out, and here's Jay-Z wearing a sweatshirt that says "Do what thou wilt," a saying attributed to Crowley. Of course he's wearing that sweatshirt. He and his wife throw up this sign all the time. Now where else do we see Hollywood openly parading the occult?
Now the subject shall bathe in the blood of a gifted turtle. This will make your show irresistible to viewers. It will be like one of those live NBC musicals that makes everyone lose their goddamn minds.
man was smeared in blood on live TV and the audience members just sat there and laughed. Because that is how ignorant we the people have been. We do not take into consideration the true meaning of what's shown to us on our screens, and this is why they feel safe openly portraying their sick traditions. Ready to go further down the rabbit hole? Oh yeah, there's another abhorrent practice that the elites of society seem fairly into. Cannibalism. And for those of you who have paid attention, you should not be at all surprised by this, for we've seen how they indulge things like pedophilia and Satanism. Is it really that hard to believe that they would sink any lower than that? We go now to an event hosted by Serbian body artist Marina Abramovic, a woman known for her rather unusual body of work, to put it lightly. Despite not being a household name, she's very well known amongst the upper class of society, having Jay-Z, Lady Gaga, James Franco, and Kim Kardashian among her acquaintances. This particular event hosted by Abramovic saw guests gathered around a table eating a cake shaped exactly like a person. Your eyes do not deceive you. These are famous people actively engaged in mock cannibalism. Here we have Will Ferrell in attendance. Of course he is. He's the guy that brought us these absolute gems. Now, Abramovic has been in the headlines recently due to a Microsoft ad she was in getting pulled from the internet, and the New York Times soon followed by putting out this article trying to paint her as a victim. In the article, Abramovic claims that she's an artist, not a Satanist. Yeah, not too sure about that. These images of her and her work certainly seem to suggest otherwise. And her handle on Twitter was Abramovic666 for crying out loud. You wouldn't do something like that unless you had, at the very least, an affinity for Satanism. Now, as you probably expected, there's other places where Hollywood hides its cannibal culture in plain sight. In even more truly abhorrent tweets, the Office actor Rainn Wilson said to the world, "What about human baby meat? Retweet what I should eat for dinner? I'm thinking pasta." Joke. How many clowns does it take to screw in a light bulb? Answer. 12. 1 to screw it in, and 11 to kidnap and chew on human babies. But you don't have to go on celebrities' Twitters to see stuff about cannibalism. Oh no. Just look to YouTube and you'll find other celebrity moments where they exemplify the saying, "Many a true word hath been spoken in jest."
I eat children. How old are you?
12.
12. Oh, okay. Only to 10.
Only
okay,
to
that's
10.
good.
Okay, we are safe.
Yeah.
That's
good.
Wow.
That looks great. Thank you. What you want in a pancake is to have the consistency of young human flesh.
It's spongy. It has life to it.
You're with a guy with brightly colored undergarments, and you got soft human flesh in front of you. You're in a weird place.
I'm looking forward to this. This is really, really going to be a great pancake.
If you'd rather have your cannibalism bragging served up as a song than as a joke, check out Katy Perry's music video for Bon Appetit, which sees Katy being unpackaged, prepared like a meal, and then served to a table of some elite guests. The last scene of the video is of Katy herself throwing off a devilish grin as she prepares to dig into a cherry pie. With severed human limbs. If you're still craving more upper-class cannibalism, just turn on your TV and flip channels to FX, and you'll have the 5th season of American Horror Story. What's it all about? Oh, nothing, just Lady Gaga being a vampire who needs to drink the blood of young children in order to stay alive. And that's not the only show that has this exact plot line. Netflix's Santa Clarita Diet is about pretty much the same thing. And speaking of Netflix, that company is just about Illuminati Central. 3 of their shows are all about satanic cults, The Order, Aries, and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which also features cannibalism. And Netflix just loves the one-eye symbol. Loves it. Hell, I just snapped this from their recent Chris Hemsworth action movie Extraction. But Netflix, as twistedly satanic as it is, doesn't hold a candle to this other, even larger company that's been a staple of our culture for nearly a century. Disney. It's about time someone really talks about the elephant in the room here. Disney is a company that's entrenched up to its eyeballs in pedophilia. Former child stars Ricky Garcia, Jordan Pruitt, and Bella Thorne have all leveled sex abuse allegations against Disney. And let's not forget, ex-Vice President Michael Laney was convicted of child abuse last year. So was Disney's music publishing director John Healy. And there have been a lot of Disney employees busted for child porn. And then there was the case of child molestation on Disney cruises, of which employees were ordered to keep quiet about. And guess where those cruises made snorkeling stops? Little St. James Island, the luxurious private island of this guy, who most certainly did not kill himself. Speaking of Epstein, Disney chairman Richard Cook was among his Lolita Express flight passengers. Disney also has quite the affinity for the boy lover symbol, which appears on the blue lion character from Disney Junior's Elaine F. Avalor on this CD for the Jungle Book and as part of the It's a Small World ride at Disneyland. Now, just how long has Disney had pedophilia lurking within its walls? Well, that started with Walt himself. In a 1975 book called Hollywood Babylon 2, filmmaker Kenneth Anger wrote a section about Disney's infatuation with a child actor named Bobby Driscoll. Studio personnel have been quoted to the effect that Bobby's charm had worked wonders on grumpy old Disney. Some animators stated that the boss seemed to have fallen in love with the boy. There may be truth in this. Well, that would certainly explain Driscoll becoming a junkie in his teens and eventually dying an early death. After all, child actors that suffered sexual abuse tend to leer into the path of drug addiction, as with Corey Haim among others. Another interesting piece of trivia about Walt Disney is that he was a Freemason. In 1920, Disney joined De Mole International, a fraternal organization that is considered part of the family of Masons. 11 years later, Walt received the De Mole Legion of Honor Award, corresponding to the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. Indeed, at the original Disneyland park, Walt set up an exclusive members-only club called Club 33. This is the interior. No further explanation needed. So now that you know that the founder of Disney belonged to an esoteric secret society, it should therefore come as no surprise that the company's products are laced with the usual symbols. The movie National Treasure is all about secret societies and the all-seeing eye. This pic from the DuckTales movie Treasure of the Lost Lamp shows the little ducklings eagerly digging up the eye in the pyramid. There's also Disney Channel's Alex Hirsch, who has a clear fondness of the one-eye pyramid and Satanism. Happy Father's Day to the ultimate father, the father of darkness, Satan. Why is somebody who works in children's TV tweeting that? So now you see that Disney is thoroughly invested in the occult. After all, most of their movies have to do with magic, witchcraft, and sorcery. No accident there. And you've probably heard about this at some point or another, but Disney has a knack for sliding sexual innuendos into the content it puts out. And you've probably seen these pictures, right? Little Mermaid priest as a boner, Tower on Little Mermaid poster looks like a penis, dust from the cliff spells the word sex in The Lion King, and here's Mufasa looking pretty thick on the Lion King poster. Like I said, this isn't an unknown occurrence, but most people probably haven't considered the full implications of this. What kind of company would enjoy putting sexual references in content geared for children? Why, a company full of pedophiles, of course. Pedophiles love sex and children being mixed together. And that concludes what I have to say about Hollywood. Am I finished altogether? Almost. Just bear with me a little longer. Please. Entertainment and media are not the only place where occult symbols can be found. They can also be seen in other institutions of power like big business, government, and finance. The all-seeing eye in a pyramid appears in the MI5 seal, the old DARPA Information Awareness seal, and, of course, on the $1 bill. The logo for CBS also looks curiously like a big eye that's watching you. The justices of the British Supreme Court make pretty important decisions while sitting around the all-seeing eye. The Masonic black and white pattern also appears in prominent institutions. The IRS headquarters building in Maryland has two black and white striped pillars with white hands at the top, because Masonic formal attire requires white gloves to be worn. Even more noteworthy is the pyramid between them. Notice how most of the pyramid is black, while the tippy top of it is white. That little white section refers to the elite at the top, who see themselves as enlightened, hence the color white, while everyone else below them, us, the general population, is ignorant and unenlightened, hence the color black. This exact pyramid symbol is also seen in Las Vegas, literally as its own separate building, the Luxor Hotel. The IRS headquarters Masonic pillars and pyramid display is also seen over in Israel, with square and compass right smack on it, confirming that the structure is indeed Masonic. Besides those symbols that we already know and love, there's other symbols that are just as worthy of mention. The flaming torch, which is associated with Lucifer, appears in the Rockefeller Standard Oil logo, in the Columbia Pictures logo, in the DIA emblem, and in the right hand of the Statue of Liberty, which was sculpted by a French Freemason. Now everyone knows the Washington Monument, but what most probably don't know is that it's derived from the Egyptian obelisk. Similar structures can be seen in London City and in the Vatican. In the book Our Phallic Heritage, author Charles G. Berger states, all pillars or columns originally had a phallic significance and were therefore considered sacred. So, all you dirty-minded folks out there who thought the Washington Monument looked like a penis were actually closer to the truth, believe it or not. The word obelisk literally means ball shaft, or ball's organ of reproduction. Ball, there's that name again. Remember the company Ball and Tanit? Remember that Baal is the god that ancient cults used to sacrifice children to? So in 3 of the world's most important cities, we got monuments to a deity who is worshipped through child sacrifice. Take a second to acknowledge the significance of that. But you certainly don't have to take a trip there to see these symbols. Oh no, just take a second to check your Gmail and you'll be face to face with the Masonic Royal Apron. If you feel like downloading some cool new apps, head on over to Google Play and you'll be looking at a more colorful depiction of the seal of Satan. This type of symbolism is universally prevalent across all institutions of power in our society: business, government, media, finance, and so on. From all this, there is only one logical conclusion that can be drawn. Our society is governed by an esoterically minded and occult-oriented ruling class. Many of our so-called freely elected leaders belong to this network of secret societies. Roughly a third of all American presidents were Freemasons, that we know of, and others, like the Bushes, were part of Skull and Bones. And then there's Bohemian Grove, a place where presidents, politicians, and other world elites gather at every year to do mock sacrificial rituals in front of a giant owl statue. The owl itself is claimed to be a representation of Moloch, another ancient deity that people sacrifice their children to, and whose name Verizon decided to use for an annual conference because I don't need to say why. The leaders that weren't part of this secret society network most certainly knew about it and tried to warn us about the threat it posed. President Theodore Roosevelt once said that behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. Woodrow Wilson, some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so watchful, so pervasive, that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. JFK, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. We as a people are inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, secret oaths, and secret proceedings. So clearly, whatever these secret societies have been up to is definitely not for the greater good of humanity, especially considering that they're committed to the worship of Satan and other child sacrifice deities. Now, some people out there familiar with all the symbols will contest me and say, well, they're not necessarily satanic symbols, and they'd be totally correct. I'd like to revisit one of Larry Johnson's tweets where he says that Luciferian doctrine incorporates esoteric beliefs of alternate personalities, light and dark, good and evil. This is very important because some of these symbols, such as the all-seeing eye, are not strictly satanic. Here it is in a depiction of Jesus, and others, like the Masonic square and compass, are a representation of the esoteric concept of the eternal soul manifesting in the temporary physical body. The point is, it's not so much the symbols themselves that are bad, some are, but it's more the people using them who are bad. The people using these symbols are part of a pedophilic Luciferian cabal that incorporates esoteric concepts and symbols into its discipline. Now, why exactly are these world elites worshipping Lucifer and dabbling in the occult? Well, here's my understanding of it. These people think of themselves as the enlightened ones. The name Lucifer itself means light bringer. A lot of the symbols that they display, such as the all-seeing eye and the lit torch, are associated with light, with reaching the light, with reaching enlightenment. So this group believes that deities like Lucifer, Baal, and Moloch gave them the means for achieving enlightenment, and in exchange for being given their knowledge and power, these people turn around and give the deities what they want: children. Another reason why the ruling class loves sacrificing kids is because the kids produce something called adrenochrome. What is adrenochrome? I'll let David Rodriguez explain.
You understand that there are children sacrifices where people actually drink adrenochrome. where they terrify the child so much. And this is hard to swallow. This is hard to even grasp, but it's an actual ancient ritual to terrify mainly children, because they're more pure, their adrenal glands are more pure, terrify them to the point where they cannot, where they're so scared and they're pumping out so much adrenaline and they're so terrified, and then you finally kill them and you drink their blood, and it's like the ultimate aphrodisiac. It's like the fountain of youth. It rebuilds collagen. It does all kinds of enhancements for the body. It's a sick ritual ceremonies, and now they bottle up and sell it in the vials, and people buy this shit. It's a drug.
You feeling sick to your stomach yet? Well, here's something that probably won't help. In 2008, Google released the internet browser Chrome. In 2009, they renamed their graphics processing unit to Adrenochrome. I told you these people love hiding in plain sight. They count on us never noticing. And all that is Pizzagate. Turns out it really wasn't just a conspiracy theory like the mainstream media said. This is absolutely 100% real, and it's been going on for a very long time. And for those of you wondering how this could have persisted for so long, well, the answer is simple. Ignorance. Our society has been completely oblivious to all the nefarious activities of the world elites. All this has been covered up so well, and the mainstream media has done a bang-up job misleading us and keeping our eyes wide shut. And because the general public hasn't had the faintest clue of any of this, the upper-class pedophiles have had all the freedom they could ever ask for to take our children from us and use them to satisfy their sick perversions and twisted religious practices. So if ignorance has been the primary enabler of this darkness, then that means the solution to eradicating this darkness is simply shining light upon it. If the masses are no longer ignorant of these happenings and no longer dismiss them as conspiracy theory, then we can unify as a collective and oust the elite pedophiles from their positions of illegitimate power. People waking up is how we effect the desired change, and you, the viewers, are in an excellent position to act as catalyst for this great awakening. By talking about this with people you know, by directing them to sources of good information, and by sharing this video with as many people as you can, you are helping the sleeping masses to awaken and thus bringing us closer to the desired outcome of eliminating the elite pedophile cabal and their preying upon of children. I started the process by putting this video out there. Now I pass the baton onto all of you and encourage you to spread the information far and wide. And I also encourage you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and to express your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. In the meantime, I'll be working on parts 2 and 3 and putting them out in the near future.